Hey girls. Hi babe. Hi Jay. Hi Jamina. It's getting close to Halloween, so I thought for our reading selection, instead of going back to Gremlins, we'd go to a new book, Ghouls Don't Scoop Ice Cream. Okay, I hope you guys enjoy it. This is archive.org. Okay. I can't believe it, Eddie complained after school. Melody sat down hard on the ground under the big oak tree beside her friends Eddie, Howie, and Liza. Melody's black pigtails bounced as she shook her head. I can't believe we have to do 100 math problems before tomorrow. I wanted to finish reading my library book. Liza looked ready to cry. Now I have to spend the whole night figuring out these problems. Howie opened his math book to page 96. Actually, these review problems are very easy. It'll be fun. Eddie threw his baseball cap at Howie. Math isn't fun. Soccer is fun. A doodle gum shake is fun, but math is not fun. Untrue. I know that from both of you. Math is very fun. Okay. Doodle gum shakes, Liza shrieked. That'll make us feel better. Let's go get one. The four kids took off across the playground. They looked both ways before crossing Forest Lane and racing down the sidewalk to the Burger Doodle restaurant. I bet the other third graders don't have to do all these math problems, Eddie complained. That's because the other third graders don't have a vampire for a teacher, Howie said. We actually never proved that Mrs. Jeepers is a vampire, Liza said when they turned the corner. After all, if she was a real vampire, then how could she be awake during the day? Vampires are supposed to be awake only at night. It's because of her magic brooch, Eddie told her. I bet that's the reason she can be awake during the day. Liza put her hands on her hips as they stood in front of Burger Doodle restaurant. Even if she is a vampire, maybe she can't help herself. Howie closed his math book. Maybe Mrs. Jeepers isn't a vampire. Maybe she's a ghoul. A ghoul? Eddie and Liza shouted together. What in the world is a ghoul? Liza asked. A ghoul is a spy for a vampire, Howie explained. I learned about ghouls when I was reading a book about vampires. Melody nodded. She remembered when Howie and she had read that garlic would repel vampires. They had taken a bottle of garlic salt and sprinkled it around their classroom. Sure enough, their teacher, Mrs. Jeepers, had started sneezing. She was allergic to the garlic, just like a vampire. Liza grabbed the door handle to Burger Doodle. Let's forget all this crazy talk about ghouls and vampires and get a big fat doodle gum shake. All right, Eddie yelled and barged right past Liza. But when what he saw inside the restaurant made him stop dead in his tracks. Who's that? Melody whispered, pointing to the figure behind the Burger Doodle counter. She's the new counter worker? How can you tell it's a she? Eddie asked. I can't even see her face. It was true. The new worker wore a dark blue sweatsuit with the hood pulled up over her head. My dad brought me here last night, Howie told them. When you get up close, she looks like a girl. Come on, Liza said. Let's get our shakes. Liza walked right up to the counter. One doodle gum shake, please, she said. The girl behind the counter looked up. With red eyes that seemed to stare right through Liza, the counter girl didn't smile, and she was so pale she looked sick. Silently, she made the shake with slow movements, then sat it in front of Liza. That will be $1, the girl said. It sounded like she was talking in her sleep. Liza gulped and pulled $1 out of her jacket pocket. When Liza handed over the money, she noticed the girl's name tag. It said Scout in big white letters. Liza took the shake to a far corner booth and waited for her friends. When they arrived with their shakes, they spoke in hushed tones. Did you see that girl's eyes? Eddie asked. I think she was up all night milking the cow to make these milkshakes. Shh, Liza said. Maybe she's sick and she can't help how her eyes look. If she's sick, Eddie said loudly, she should be at home in bed, not making my milkshakes. I don't want to end up with red eyes, too. Melody giggled. Red eyes would match your red hair perfectly. And Scout syrup, Howie said, nodding toward the counter. The kids stared at Scout. The hooded girl silently scooped a big blob of red ice cream into a dish and then poured a heavy red liquid on top. Scout took the dish to a small table in the back, where she stuck her pale face so close to the dish and started slurping. Yuck, Melody said softly. Doesn't she have any manners? Liza nervously took a sip of her milkshake and continued watching Scout lick up the red syrup. When she finished, The new counter girl looked up with her red eyes. Liza choked on her milkshake as she noticed how the sticky red syrup dribbling down Scout's chin looked just like blood. The bells on the door of Burgerdoodle jingled. When it opened suddenly, Eddie quickly lowered his head and slurped a shake. He wasn't fast enough to miss Carrie batting her long eyelashes in his direction. Carrie was in their class, and she had a habit of following Eddie wherever he went. Melody giggled. Carrie likes you, she told Eddie. She does not, Eddie said. Then why does she always wink at you? Liza asked. Because she's batty, Eddie said. Ignore her, so she'll go away. Carrie didn't go away. Instead, she skipped across the floor so that her blonde curls bounced. She stopped right by Eddie. I knew I'd find you here, Carrie said. I think I'll get a shake, too. I'd like to shake her, Eddie mumbled when she skipped to the counter. I'd shake her all the way to the North Pole. Be nice, Liza warned. She isn't hurting anyone. Not yet, Eddie said as Carrie brought her drink to the table and squeezed in between Eddie and Melody. Why aren't you home working on the math problems? Howie asked. Carrie shook her head and batted her eyelashes. I can't go home yet. We're moving today. My daddy just bought a house on Olympus Lane. Carrie's father was the president of the Bailey City Bank. Her family had more money than anyone in Bailey City. Carrie was used to getting everything she wanted. Carrie spoke loudly for everyone in the entire restaurant to hear. Our house is the biggest one in the entire neighborhood. Melody rolled her eyes. It may be the biggest, but I wouldn't want to live there, she told Carrie. Why not? Carrie asked. Because, Melody said, all those houses are next to the cemetery. It's the neighborhood of the dead. Eddie started to laugh, but just then Scout's ice cream scooper clattered to the floor. Liza gasped when Scout headed their way. She was moving so fast over the shining linoleum that it looked like she was gliding. The 5 kids looked up into the red eyes of the strange ice cream worker. Scout stared straight at Carrie. Tell me all about your new neighborhood, Scout asked her in a slow, serious voice. There are not many houses, Carrie told her. It's very quiet, especially since the cemetery is close by. Eddie laughed. That's right. There's no one to bother you except dead people. Excellent, Scout said slowly. Why do you want to know about Carrie's neighborhood? Liza asked. Scout turned her red eyes toward Liza. Because the family I work for is planning to move to Bailey City. I came before them to investigate. Investigate what? Howie asked. I'm looking for the perfect house, Scout said, and I think I might find it in Carrie's neighborhood. Scout slowly turned and made her way back to the ice cream counter. The 5 kids watched her grab a small tape recorder. Scout talked in low tones into the tiny recorder. That girl gives me the creeps, Melody said. I've never heard of a house detective before, Eddie said. Howie shook his head. I don't think she's a detective, he said. I think she's a spy. The next morning, Liza, Howie, Eddie, and Melody met under the giant oak tree on the Bailey School playground. I stayed up an hour past my bedtime, and I still didn't finish all my homework, Liza complained. Howie shrugged. It wasn't that hard. Maybe I could help you. What homework? Eddie asked. Eddie, Liza scolded, you'll never get out of the 3rd grade if you don't do your homework. That means you'll be stuck with a vampire teacher for the rest of your life, Melody warned him. She pointed across the playground to Mrs. Jeepers, who was walking toward the school. Mrs. Jeepers wore a polka-dotted dress and had long red hair. The sun glinted off the green pin she always wore at her throat. It was the brooch most kids thought for sure was magic. Mrs. Jeepers doesn't scare me, Liza said, but that new ice cream worker at the Burgerdoodle does. It's creepy having a spy in Bailey City. Scout is not a spy, Eddie said. After all, there isn't much to spy on around here. Maybe she's here to meet up with another spy, Howie said slowly. What are you talking about? Melody asked. There aren't any Bailey City spies. Then why is Mrs. Jeepers talking into tape recorder too? Liza asked. Liza pointed across the playground. Mrs. Jeepers had stopped in the shadows of the school building. She stared at the 4 friends under the oak tree, and she talked into a tape recorder that looked exactly like the one Scout had used the night before. You can't believe Mrs. Jeepers is a spy too, Melody said. Teachers are too busy grading math papers to spy. It is strange that her tape recorder is exactly like Scout's, Liza told them. Eddie interrupted his friends. Just a minute, he said. My shoe is ringing. He slipped off his shoe and held it to Liza's ear. It's the Super Spy channel for Liza. They want to know what it's like to have a head full of air. Liza batted away Eddie's stinky sneaker. Make jokes if you want, Liza said, but I think there's something strange happening in Bailey City. Tell her she's being silly, Melody said to Howie. Howie didn't say a word. His face was white and his hands shook as he hurried to pull out a book from his backpack. I do have something to say, Howie told his friends, but I have a feeling you're not going to like it. You're absolutely right, Eddie said. I don't want to hear